Today we are at the 5th episode of GS2 Governance. So I would request you to watch all the other 4 episodes if you haven't watched it, because this 5th episode will be a continuation of the previous 4 episodes. So it would be recommendatory to watch all the previous episode. So before starting our lectures, I would have a small announcement. Please do have a look at all the playlists which are available in this channel, and these are actually specifically designed for UPSC. These are also part of our paid courses, but if the response is good here, we will be considering putting here it fully for free. So what you have to do is, please do subscribe and leave a feedback comment here. Also, if you are looking for a good quality test series, then you can contact Vysh Ias WhatsApp. The number is given on the screen, 7200681675. It is a good quality test series, and many questions from this have come in UPSC prelims paper from the past. So please do have a look at that. So without any delay, let's start the lecture. So the topic we have to deal today is development process and development industry. Okay. So talking about development process, we have to know what is the difference between development and development process. So development, it is an idea, or it is a ideal. So this is actually related to GS3 economy also, the difference between GDP and development. This is important. So development is establishment of a egalitarian social order by securing to the people social, economic and political justice. So it is actually the duty of government. So government has to establish an egalitarian social order where all the people are coexisting in a diverse country like India, and the nature of the state, as said in DPSP and Constitution, has to be a welfare state. So for the welfare state, we need the coexistence of all the sections of society. So it is the duty of government. So the development, it is actually pointing to the socio-economic development through well-prepared planning, well-prepared and precise plans for development. And what is the way to achieve this development? It is nothing but social justice. So social justice is the path towards development. This is the common idea or the ideal behind development. Then another aspect through which we can view development is that it is bringing in a social change, and it is the output of good governance. If good governance is in place in a state, then the output is going to be social change. Social change means constructive social change. It is a positive note. Then development process. Talking about development process, it is a constantly evolving process. It is not coming through one process. So it is constantly evolving. As new and new challenges come to a state, development process has also to be upgraded, and it has to constantly evolve. Okay. Tell it in another manner. This development process, it is an efficient adaptation to a set of challenges in political and social sphere. See, in political aspects also we are having certain pressures, like criminalization of politics is there, then lack of free and fair elections is there, corruption is there, red tapeism is there, poverty is there, hunger is there, etc. Then in social sphere also we are having certain problems like hunger, then gender inequality, then poor access to education, etc. So development process has to sum up this process. The state has to evolve some solutions so that it can adapt effectively to these political and social challenges. So that is the idea of development process. Then we are moving on to the subcategories. Non-governmental organization is the first category. We are going to learn about non-governmental organizations and self-help groups. So first is non-governmental organizations or NGOs. So as the name suggests, these NGOs, it is not for profit. So it is not working on a commercial kind of thing. Rather, it can be funded by government organizations, foundations or private players. Funding can come, but it is not working for profit. Rather, it is working for social benefits. Okay. So that is the key idea of NGOs. Then what can come in the purview of NGO? So it can be trust, it can be societies and charitable companies. All these are NGOs in one or the other aspect. Then coming to the importance of NGO. So NGOs, they are like participative governance, because people itself are coming into organizations and they are collectively performing an action to bring in social benefits or social welfare. So it is an important aspect of participative governance, which in turn is a key indicator of representative democracy. So people are also active participants in democracy or the administration of a state. So that is one point. Then India, it is a developing country, so it is already having scarce resources, and the GDP levels are also very low with respect to other countries. So NGO, it can act as an aid or helping hand for the government, because government is already having shortage of resources. So NGOs and government, they can work hand in hand and bring development and a welfare state. So it is also helping in mobilization of resources. Okay, then it is the link between government and people. See, even though we are having democracy in our country, the gap between government and people is huge. Can people approach a government? No, it is only linked through elections. Okay, during the time of elections only many people will be coming to know about the representatives. Other than that, there is no direct link between government and people. So NGOs, it is acting as a bridge. Government's shortcomings, it will be communicated by NGOs to the people. In the same manner, the people's aspirations will be communicated to the government by the NGOs. So it is bridging that gap between government and people, and it is working in a citizen-centric manner. It is working for the benefit of citizens, and the main areas of NGOs has been in environmental, political and human rights. Okay, bringing in environmental awareness among the people, that some projects, some environmentally unstable projects which are coming in certain rural areas, that will be blocked by NGOs participation, and these NGOs will be giving awareness to the people relating to the challenges of those environmental projects. Then political and human rights, they will be involved in awareness of people about their political rights, their reservations, etc. So since most of the people in India are illiterate and they are having low social mobility, these kinds of organization plays an important role in uplifting those sections. Okay, next is an important point, it is the watchdog of state. So when there is a functional NGO, when there is a set of functional NGO and other civil societies, the government can't resort to any sort of bad governance, because it is under constant scrutinization by this organization. So it is the watchdog of the state, and so government will be trying to bring in proper implementation and efficient governance. So that is about NGOs. Then what are the role of NGOs in India? So in India, we are having poor infrastructural development, especially we can see in deprived areas. Schools are not there, roads are not there, colleges are not there, even primary healthcare centers, etc. are not there. So NGOs is actually driving the infrastructural development in terms of housing, sanitation, public utility services, etc. And it is also roping in hands with the government, so for supporting the pilot projects, so that people will be also developing a trust in government, because it is rooted through NGOs. It is a direct link for people. So people will be interested in such pilot projects, and it is also helping in overcoming the red tapeism of bureaucracy. So most people are illiterate, so they are helping people to reach out to their rights. Okay, then it established its role to establish a political democracy in India, because RTI, Right to Information Act, which is under Article 19, it is a landmark act in India's political history, because this actually brought in transparency to the governance framework of India. So this act is the result of the efforts of many NGOs. So it is reiterating the efforts to establish a political democracy within India. Then, as I have said, public trust building. Since NGOs are the direct link to the people, it will be acting as a tool to establish public trust within people. Okay, so it is involved in horizontal and vertical communication, not only between people. Horizontal communication means between people. It is acting as a tool of communication about awareness to disperse information to people about their rights, about their welfare schemes, etc. And also vertical communication, also the NGOs are playing a very good role between the people and government. So this is like a vertical communication. Okay, so it is an important functional aspect in India's democracy. Then funding for research and training, as I have said, scarce resources is there, so there has to be some funding for undertaking any research and training. So it is actually driving the human resource development also. Then another point is, it is the voice of vulnerable. So these vulnerable sections like tribal communities and rural India, all those people, they are having a voice through NGOs. NGOs are actually taking up their problems. Okay, next is a flow chart which you can use in answer writing. This is telling about NGOs. What are the political and governance factors? Then what are the socio-economic factors? What are the legal and administrative factors? What are the societal norms and values? So this goes in a cycle, and these all are conglomerating into one cycle. Okay, so this is about a motto of NGO. What are the factors of NGO driving the functioning of NGO? So this is one aspect. Okay. Next is some notable examples of the functioning of NGO. How NGOs have been beneficial in India so far. So this you can use in case studies for the answer writing. So during 2004 tsunami, rescue and relief during disasters, it was done by NGOs. During COVID times also, we have seen active participation from the part of NGOs. Then ban on the sex determination of fetus, which is actually a very important problem related to the patriarchal norms. So this banning of sex determination is also the result of the active involvement of NGOs. Then there is a NGO called Yuva in Mumbai, and it has involved very much in the improvement of slum communities, the slum development, to treat them in human conditions. So to uplift them, it has, the Yuva NGO has had a very important role. Then in health sector, free health checkups like camps are there in rural areas that are being conducted by NGOs. Then with respect to tribal rights, like you can quote case laws in Vedanta versus POXO case. Here in this case, the tribal rights were reiterated by the court. Okay, so this is also an action of NGOs. So like this, you can add examples to substantiate your answer. Okay, then even though we are having many such benefits, there are some issues which are related to NGO. There are some flaws with respect to NGOs. What are the flaws? So first is the interference in decentralized governance machinery. So since NGOs is working mainly in deprived areas like rural areas, there the role of local government goes into vain. So this NGOs will be becoming more powerful than the local bodies over there. So this is not actually suitable for a good democracy. Actually, they have to work hand in hand. NGO shouldn't be over dominating the local government established by elections. So it is the interference in decentralized governance machinery. And many NGOs in the purview of the social justice or social welfare activities, they have been involved in influencing the local politics. They have been they have actually resorted to unfair practices like vote bank politics, and this is hindering free and fair elections, and that is not suitable for a democracy. Then next is the conflict between the local customs and development agenda. What this means is that development, it is like incorporation of liberal ideas, but liberal ideas can't be incorporated in a country like India, which is having more of socio-cultural norms. People can't be pacified to follow liberal ideas all of a sudden. So this becomes a conflict between the people and NGOs. So what we can do is, development has to be there, but it has to incorporate the local customs and psychological well-being of the deprived communities like tribal people. Okay, they are having their own customs and tribal customary laws. So while bringing in development, NGOs should also keep in mind about their customs. Then only we can bring accommodative justice. Then next issue is lack of transparency. What this means is that there is many social evils like trafficking, organ trafficking is there, then child abuse, child trafficking is also there, then tax evasion like charitable trust, they are exempted from paying tax. Such kinds of happenings are happening in the backdoor of NGOs. In the backdoor of NGOs, invisibly these activities are taking place because they are having many loopholes in the laws. So legal loopholes are there which drives these kinds of social evils. Then next is paternalistic attitudes. What this means is that NGOs over a period of time are thinking that they only know everything about the rural development. Others are not to be involved because they are not capable. They are seeing the other communities are as incapable. They are only the supreme power and they can only drive in development. Such a kind of attitude is coming. So it actually hinders the essence of public participation. They are bringing in all the decisions for a community. See, when a rural community is being aided by an NGO, that rural community also should be having equal participation as that of NGO. But that is not there. Then next is lack of government support. See, already NGO is working as an aid to government. NGO is reaching out to the remote parts where government can't reach. So ideally government should give support like grant and aids or regulatory framework, the liberalizations in regulatory framework, but that is not being given. So administrative hurdles are there. Then there is institutional challenges like lack of professionalism, inadequate leadership, etc. Because many times NGO jobs are opted by people as the last resort. So people will not be capable, the employees will not be capable, or they will not be having a professionalistic kind of approach and work, and there is inadequate leadership also. So that actually prevents the efficient functioning of NGOs. Then there is regional divide. Over a period of time, we have seen more NGOs concentrating on urban centric projects, and they are moving on to focusing upon the publicity. So they are actually deviating from the main purpose, social welfare. They are relying upon the publicity kind of things. So that is one problem. Then moral and ethical conduct of youth, it is also in question. See, if NGOs kind of organizations have to function, then we should have a morally responsible set of youth population. So that is actually lacking in India. That is why we are having many cases like rapes and POXO cases. So the moral values within the youth is actually declining within India. So that is a problem which puts the functioning of NGOs in question. Okay, so next is, you can use another flow chart which you can incorporate in answer writing, like what are the roles of NGOs. Basic social service is there, then community development is there, then initiatives to protect environment, promote the interest of poor. Like this you can use many diagrams also. Okay, now what are the steps taken by the government so far to the betterment of NGOs? So there are many steps. Out of this you can learn some 5 or 6 steps, and that you can use during your answer writing. That is, first is Foreign Contribution Regulation Amendment Act. This act was recently amended and it made mandatory for all NGO to receive foreign fund through designated bank account. So this is actually ensuring the transparency within the functioning of NGO. Through this step, government is trying to ensure that NGOs are not deviating from its actual motive. So it is like a cleaning process or reforming process. Next is constitutional provisions are there. In Article 19(1)(c) in the fundamental right, it is said that right to form association. Okay, so this includes NGOs also. So it is constitutionally also protected. In DPSP also, in Article 43, directive principles also to promote cooperatives in rural areas, that is being said. So that is also a boost to the formation of NGOs. Then concurrent list in entry 28, it also talks about the charities and charitable institutions, then religious endowments, etc. Okay, next is national policy on voluntary sector. This voluntary sector comes with NGOs only. Then recently a Ministry of Cooperation as a separate ministry was carved out in the union government. So this is like specialization of task and recognizing the importance of cooperative industries, which is again civil society only. Okay, so next is suggestions or way forward. What other steps we can do for improving the plight of NGOs and how we can increase the potential of NGO as a tool of development. So first is state and NGO, they should work in an aiding manner. So no one should dominate other. So they can actually aid each other. state should be regulating NGOs in an efficient way, and NGO should be having a scrutiny, doing its public scrutiny job in an efficient way. So in this way we can establish a cross and check balance system. So it is like a constructive means of development. So what is the role of state here? It can liberalize regulations and bring in legal methods for grant in aid kind of thing and monitoring mechanism. Then another thing is inculcating the moral responsibility within children and the youth. So incorporating volunteerism in schools, colleges and other educational institutions through counseling sessions or awareness classes. Then next is coordinated approach between various state and non-state actors. There should be an efficient coordination or cohesiveness between the policy making. So NGOs should also be given a role in the policy making of government so that they can act in a coordinated approach. Then improving employment avenues in NGO. So what a state can do is NGO jobs can be made more attractive. Okay, so they can bring in trained people and the job security can be given. The job attributes can be improved. Okay, so in this way we will be getting more professionalistic and more able people into the NGO working. Then next is decentralized leadership. In any manner, the role of local government in rural areas and other remote areas shouldn't be curtailed. So NGOs, the role should be very clear. It should act as aid only. It should not go into taking upon the control of a state. Okay, so decentralized leadership is necessary. So that is done. Next we are moving on to the concept called self-help groups. This is also another kind of development industry or civil society. So the meaning of self-help groups is that it is a homogeneous group. Okay, so it is consisting of like same class people or same caste people or same social status people. These kinds of people will be coming in a group. So it is a homogeneous group. Then it is mainly composed of rural poor and it is voluntarily formed. No one is forcing someone to form this group. It is voluntarily formed only. And it is bringing in a savings culture. All these people will be pooling their savings into one. Okay. So it is a convenient way to mutually contribute to credit needs. Since these people are having less access to credit system, formal credit system access is less, and what they are having is informal credit systems like money lenders, etc. So this actually drives them to debt, suicides, farmer suicides, etc. So what you can do is, in self-help groups, these people are grouping themselves into voluntary groups and they are bringing in savings. They are pooling their savings, and within these groups they are actually giving this savings as credit to the members of this group. So they are mutually cooperating each other for aiding each other's development, and it is an informal organization. It will be comprising of some 10 to 20 people, and it is getting backup from state actors also, like government, banks, etc. are taking steps to promote this self-help groups. Then it is actually in lines with the Gandhian ideals of Gram Swaraj regarding the rural development and village development. So it is one important part in rural development agenda, and it is involved in micro level financing, and it is reiterating the coexistence. Since these people, they are building a trust within themselves and they are coexisting, they are financing themselves in a micro way. Then it is a tool of women empowerment, because most of the self-help groups are formed by women, by the women, for the women and of the women. Okay, then it is an alternative to lack of access to formal channels. Like if these people have to get a formal credit, then they have to get a collateral. But in India we are having fragmentation of land. Many people won't be having some land records itself. So it helps in accessing easy credit through informal channels also. Then the concept actually originated in Bangladesh as a poverty eradication tool, and it was a success there. So it was replicated in many other countries like India. Okay. Then next is the role of SHG. Then the role of SHG comes with savings culture. India has learned to inculcate a savings culture, or rural India actually incorporated savings culture with the advent of self-help groups. So this is actually in lines with Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-sufficiency. So self-sufficiency in turn brings in rural development. Next, when this rural development, when people is gaining some mobility in terms of finance and voice and awareness, then they are automatically getting autonomy in decision making, like interest rate, repayment schedule, etc. This will be decided within the members of this self-help groups. So they don't have to beg to money lenders or other informal channels of credit. Then it is also effective forum for the discussion of problems and adequate solution. See, I have already said it is a homogeneous group. So these people will be having same set of problems. So the chances of conflict among them during discussion is very less, because all these people want to solve their problems. Since the problems are same, they will be in a condition, or they will be interested to devise newer solutions. So it is a kind of collective responsibility and collective problem solving. Okay. Then, as I have said, it is acting as a credit channel. It can take loan, and it is contributing to the inclusive banking. Many rural areas and deprived communities are out of the banking sector. They are not having even bank accounts. So this contributes to bringing in inclusive banking. Inclusive banking in turn reiterates financial inclusion and priority sector lending. Okay. Next, there is a quote which you can use in answer writing. Civil society and voluntary and non-governmental organization, it is the backbone of collective articulation of citizen interest in a democracy. So SHG is also an important non-state actor. Then constitutional provisions also you can write. Article 19(1)(c), right to form association. Article 43, states to promote cooperatives in rural areas. This is same for NGOs and SHG. So whenever a question comes with respect to SHG and NGO, you can use these articles. See, this is how you should learn how to use the same content for different answers, so that you can ease your efforts in mains preparation. Okay. Next is the objectives of women self-help group. Empowering women to take collective decisions, then savings habits, then platform for exchange of ideas, liberal ideas like dilution of patriarchal norms, then decision making capacity of members, it is also getting improved. Okay, then what are the issues in SHG so far? So here we can see monopoly of leaders. One leader, many a times in a SHG group, one or two people, they will be of higher education. Comparatively, relatively, they will be having education. Okay, so this one or two persons, they will be dominating over others. So there is monopoly of leaders and ignorance for awareness. They will be taking this paternalistic attitudes to always support the people. They are not enabling the other group members. They are actually playing the big bro game of other members in the group. So this is not a good aspect. Then less competitive edge in terms of trained personals, quality enhancement, etc. Okay, so they are having certain establishment also, like pickle establishments are there, then other baking industries are there, small scale industries. So when such industries are coming into the forefront, the matter is that the problem is that the quality is not assured, and they are not having adequate inputs also to enhance the quality. Then the lack of trained personals. So these two issues are invariably making their products or their marketing less competitive with that of the other established units. Okay, next is the marketing issues. Since they are of very poor, since they are coming from a poor background, they won't be having that much money to invest in marketing strategies, and they won't be having that much knowledge also. So it result into marketing issues of their products. Financial crunch is a problem, lower reach of their problems due to the quality issue, then consumer trust issues are there. Okay, certification issues are there. So these are matters relating to these small types of industries which are undertaken by self-help groups. Then codependency with NGO and government in a greater degree. So dependency is not, codependency is okay to certain extent, but when it becomes so much increased, when it goes to a higher degree, then the autonomy of SHG will be getting reduced. So there should be a balance between the cooperation among NGO, government and SHG. Then there is a RBI report which states that many states they are facing the issues of ghost borrowers, okay, due to bank linkage program which is being brought in. So this is also another issue. Then next issue is the permanency issue. So socio-cultural reasons like patriarchy, it leads to the discontinuation of women. So this is one important issue. Since self-help groups are mainly dominated by women, these women somehow have to get out from this group in a near future, because they will be facing hurdles due to marriage pressure. They will be having this double burden of household chores and child care. So due to these factors, these women have to step out from their groups. So this is an issue of permanency. Then economic ethics is there. Like in this group, only some will be having good awareness. 1 or 2 people will be having good awareness of marketing strategies or profit orientation. So that people will be exploiting the weak, deprived and illiterate members who are in the group. Okay. Then next is the steps taken by the state for the betterment of SHGs. So first is the SHG bank linkage project by NABARD. Actually it is one of the world's biggest microfinance program. Then next is Swarna Jayanti Gram Rozgar Yojana. It is dealing with the upgradation of skills of the SHG, okay, so that they can become competitive. So it is like enhancing the self-employment potential. Then you can include some case studies also when this question is asked. Case studies Kudumbashrees of Kerala and Mahila Arthik Vikas Mahamandal of Maharashtra. These two are some success models from India. In Kudumbashrees, it is like a government agency and it focused on poverty alleviation and women empowerment. So it has also gained some effective result out of this program also, like microcredit, entrepreneurship potential of women were increased, like that thing. Then Mahila Arthik Vikas Mahamandal also, it is like a community managed resource center. It is giving financial and livelihood services to self-help groups. So this is one important aspect. So SHG is getting that aid. Okay. So CMRC, it is self-sustaining and provides need-based services. Then next program is Women Self-Help Group Scheme by NABARD itself. It is done in left-wing extremism areas like this belt of India, Odisha, Jharkhand, that belt of India. There it is being done. So it is also bringing the upliftment of women. Okay. Next is, here I have given a flow chart how the organization of SHG is there. Many self-help groups will be coming together and they will be forming a cluster or village organization, and many such groups will be conglomerating into an SHG federation, apex or mandal samakya. So this is the organization map of self-help group. Okay. Next is moving on to suggestions. So what all can be done to improve the functioning of SHG? So first is training and skill upgradation. So they should be giving classes on how to manage their finance, how to do marketing with limited number of resources, then how to increase the profit and quality. So for that, many classes or awareness initiatives can be done. Then consumer support for initiatives by SHG. Like here you can link this with brand consciousness. India, the youth, especially the youth, is actually moving on to a brand consciousness. Indian brands are actually looked down by the youth. Although some brands are less quality, only Indian people, they have to promote Indian brands and Indian initiatives. So the consumer part, this is from the part of society, a societal support by consumer activism, by consumer preference for these products can be given. Then realization of potential. See, this is a tool of women empowerment and employment generation also. So this is the duty of government. The potential of this self-help group must be realized and it should be translated into better workforce participation rate so that unemployment problem can be corrected. Then government steps are legal safeguards and incentives. It can be within SHG, it can actually bring in a targeted kind of thing. within SHG or within deprived groups who are more deprived that the government can target, and for those targeted sections legal safeguards and incentives can be given. So in this way government can drive the growth of MSME sector and export potential can also be increased. Then there is a committee data, Vysh Ias committee. It is like saying microfinance institutions to loan people as members of SHGs only. So this is telling that while SHG is extending loans to the people, it has to give those loans, like loans are being given to members of SHG only and loans are not given to individuals only. So the address or the address by which the loan should be given is to be members of SHG. Okay, so that is one committee recommendation. Then SHG bank linkage program with a mentor through an attractive promotional grant, it can be promoted. So this is the recommendation of second ARC. So these two are value addition point which you can use. Okay, next is moving on to the practice question for this day. The emergence of self-help groups in contemporary time points to the slow but steady withdrawal of the state from developmental activities. So examine the role of SHGs in the developmental activities and the measures taken by the government of India to promote the SHGs. So this is a 2017 question. Please try attempting that and we'll be discussing it in the next class. Okay, so now let's move on to the discussion of the practice question which was given in the earlier episode. Okay, move on to the practice question discussion of the earlier episode. The question was, the cooperative sector's immense transformative power has not been optimally realized so far. So in the light of this statement, suggest measures to fully realize the sector's potential. So an introduction would be the most effective tool for rural development. So you can quote this cooperative sector as the tool for rural development, and you can quote even Gandhian Gram Swaraj ideal. So this is actually pointing to the development of cooperative sector only. Then what is the potential of cooperative sector? So the question is talking about the potential. So you can quote the subheading or the body part as the potential of cooperative sector. So here you can write about economic mobility. So while you are having cooperative sector, you are having the pooling of investment. So you can get smoother access to credit. The deprived sections will be having adequate formal channels for credit also. So they don't have to rely upon money lenders and other persons. Then collective risk undertaking and investment. So since these people are a group, they can undertake the risk collectively and they can make investment also out of the credit. So this becomes important with respect to agriculture sector. Then development, it is the tool of development. So this cooperative sector, it is actually aiding the development of MSME sector, which is the future driver of growth for a country like India. Then it is enforcing decentralized public service delivery. See, you can see the success of milk cooperatives in India like Milma, Avin, etc. So these are like the plus points of cooperative sector only. Then political ethos. So it is actually a part of participative democracy which is being said in Article 19. So people are also having a part in governance. People are governing themselves. Then absorption of workforce to create a welfare state. Many people are unemployed. So you can absorb this workforce and create a welfare state in which all the individuals are getting the social justice. Then it is the first point of resort for vulnerable sections. So abruptly starting an entrepreneurship, that is not possible for vulnerable sections. Abruptly starting a initiative or an enterprise, that is not possible for vulnerable sections like women and rural people. So cooperative sector is like an easy channel or easily available channel for them. Then dilution of regionalism. Since people are working in a collective manner, they are working in a collective ethos also. So there will be dilution of regionalism. They will be having a feeling of oneness. So this brings in unity and integrity to the nation. So next thing is the suggestions or the way forward. What more can be done? So cooperative led agricultural modernization and focus on small industries. This can be one step. Then next is bringing in the governance reforms. So bureaucracy is still a hurdle because it is having this red tapeism and mismanagement of funds, and political interference is also there. So this can be tackled through taking adequate governance reforms. Then training of personnel, improving the coverage. Okay. So the recent step, Ministry of Cooperation was formed in the union government. So this is a good step with respect to cooperatives, because the sector is going to get even more adequate care and concern. So training also can be undertaken along with this. Then moving on to the conclusion. So given the financial crunch of the state and inadequacy to provide remote service delivery, because India is a populated country and the state can't provide all the services because it is having limitations also. So this can be a tool by which government can be a facilitator so that the people themselves can develop. So this is the model answer. Thank you.